I sought this debate because of the importance of village schools to the lives of many of my families in Stratford-on-Avon constituency, living in rural communities. For many villages, their school is part of the fabric of rural life. It is what keeps a community thriving. It gives children a place of belonging. It brings parents and carers together. It sustains village identity and community cohesion. Many families choose to build their lives in rural South Warwickshire precisely because the village school is there. And once a village loses its school, something irreplaceable is lost with it. I speak not only as a constituency MP, but as someone who served as a school governor of a small rural school for many years, and whose own children attended a village primary. I know how much a child's early learning environment matters, and for many children, a small village school provides a sense of safety and familiarity that lays the foundation for confidence and aspiration. The relative size, small size, allows teachers to develop close relationships with pupils and families, to intervene early, and to support children who may otherwise feel lost in larger settings. For children with additional needs, or those who struggle with busy environments, this can be transformative. Rural schools, however, face a particular challenge with fluctuating pupil numbers. Housing developments take time to materialize. A quiet admissions year should never be misinterpreted as evidence that a school lacks potential. With the right support, schools can thrive at the heart of their communities.
Ready to give way?
Yes, I will.
Can I first of all commend the Honourable Lady for bringing this forward? If not one of us doesn't have a small rural school, which is really important. I think of the one of my constituency, Lockridge. I referred to it, the Honourable Lady, beforehand. It was a small hamlet just outside of Newton Ards. Lockridge Primary School was under some pressure financially a few years ago. They became an integrated primary school, and thereby they were able to provide the small classes, focusing on providing education to rural children and promoting social development. Does the Honourable Lady agree that the Department of Education must always ensure that village schools have the funding and support they need, so children and parents in villages rely on to get a good education, and we must also allow the risk of closure never to happen through poor funding?
Absolutely. I agree. I fully agree with the honourable member, and I hope to hear what the Minister has to say about funding for rural schools. Nowhere has this pressure been felt more deeply in my constituency than a Great Alne Primary School, threatened with closure by Reform-led Warwickshire County Council. In recent months, I've received heartfelt testimonies from parents, former pupils, former members of staff, and the community. They describe a school that is not simply an educational setting, but a family. They spoke of small classes where every child is known, of all the residents coming into school to read, to join lunchtime activities, to share talks on space, and of children visiting the retirement village to sing Christmas carols, forging intergenerational friendships. They told me that the school has been the beating heart of the village, a place where friendships form, where confidence grows, and where children who might struggle in larger settings are able to thrive. Yes, I will.
Schools are not only at the heart of village communities, but they're what make living in rural villages in North Norfolk viable for young families. Without village schools, working-age parents simply can't live in these areas, and they'll leave for towns and cities. But the current funding formula doesn't recognise the importance of these schools to communities as a whole. Does she agree with me the government must review the funding formula and ensure that rural village schools have a funding floor protection before, for many, it's too late?
I fully agree with my honourable friend, and also the fact that village schools have to be, they're quite exceptional because of their location and because of the very isolated and remote communities that they serve.
Yes, on that point. As many of our members have already mentioned, I have two local village schools, one in Laycock and one in Lydiard Millicent, both of whom provide a fantastic opportunity for working families, because without them, those children would not be able to get to school via public transport, because the public transport is so poor, which would mean that the parents would have to give up work. So would my honourable friend agree with me that children's education should not be penalised simply because of where they live and a lack of access to good transport, so typical of rural areas?
My honourable friend put it so clearly and so well, and I will come to transport, actually, the challenges of transport in rural areas. So I've received so many powerful accounts from my constituents. They show how a school and its community enrich one another. Festivals organized by parents, bacon bap mornings, Santa's sleigh, tree planting with residents. These experiences give children a sense of belonging and a sense of pride in their place, and teach them about the wider community. And I want to thank every parent, carer, and resident, past and present, who wrote to me and who has worked so hard to support Great Alne in difficult circumstances.
We should give way on that point.
I would.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way on that point. She's outlined people who are involved in making sure schools function. Quite often I'm seeing in my area, in some of the village schools in Scotland, Burton Leonard and across the piece, that PTA associations are actually having to fund the bare minimum and basics. We've seen classrooms that are not fit for purpose, which were meant to be temporary, which are now being used permanently. Does she agree with me that we do need a better funding model for village schools?
Absolutely, and because of their uniqueness, the government needs to look again at how these very important schools, these community hubs, are funded again. So I will continue to make the case for support, for stability, and for a future for Great Alne Primary School. In parts of the country, including mine, there are growing concerns about how school transport arrangements are being handled. In Warwickshire, those concerns have intensified following proposals brought forward by the Reform administration that runs Warwickshire County Council. It has become clear from both the consultation documents and the Council's public statements that the leadership does not fully understand the realities of rural life in South Warwickshire. The Reform-run County Council new policy suggests that unlit rural lanes can still be considered safe walking routes for children. He assumes that pupils, including those with additional needs, can rely on public transport that simply does not exist in many rural villages. It implies that families can use disability benefits to fund transport that should be statutory. These ideas reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of the geography of South Warwickshire and the pressures that families face every single day.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I have a very similar story, what's happening in rural Devon as well. In my Newton Abbot constituency, we have schools in Broadhempston and Bishopstainton where they see falling roll numbers. And without the critical input of a core funding floor and help with transport, these schools are likely to eventually close, and that will kill those villages. And we must not allow that to happen.
Absolutely. I thank my honourable friend for his important intervention, and I will talk about what happens if such schools close down, what happens to the wider community, how it reverberates. Parents tell me that the nearest village school is not merely a preference. It is the only school they can safely and realistically access. When councils start consultation on closures without engaging properly with those who rely on these services, the consequences are serious. And I have to say that with proper, meaningful support, rather than a managed decline, village schools with fluctuating numbers will thrive once again. These concerns are closely also linked to road safety. I frequently receive letters from schools, teachers, parents, and pupils across Stratford-on-Avon raising concerns that the roads around their communities and schools are simply not safe enough. Only last month I visited Mapleborough Green Church of England Primary School. The children explained how cars are failing to stop at their pedestrian lights, how they have seen fast-moving traffic and overtaking near the crossing, and how these near misses make them feel anxious on their journey to school on a very busy road. I want to say directly to those pupils, you made your voice heard, and I've written to Warwickshire County Council to ask for urgent action on the measures that the children have proposed. Yeah. When children tell us that they do not feel safe crossing the road outside their school, we must listen. Mm-hmm. Government and local highway authorities need to be far more responsive to the needs of communities. Safety is not optional. It is basic, it is everyday, and it must be delivered. When a village school closes, the impact is immediate. Children face more difficult and dangerous journeys to the next school. Parents absorb new costs that they cannot manage. The delicate social fabric of villages begins to fray. Any policy decisions about the future of rural schools must take account of these realities. They cannot be reduced to administrative convenience. Decisions are being made in a way that is detached from rural life and detached from the people who will feel the consequences first. For the Liberal Democrats, education is the best investment a country can make in its future. Years of underfunding have left schools trying to manage rising costs, as we heard from members across the House, delayed repairs and stretched staff resources. I welcome the steps the government have taken to increase the school's budget, expand free school meals for the poorest families, and strengthen the pupil premium. These are positive measures, but they will not by themselves guarantee the stability that rural schools need. Rural schools cannot be left behind. We believe that schools and college funding must rise above inflation each year, that the backlog of repairs must finally be addressed, and that every school should have a dedicated mental health professional so that families can seek help early where they are. These improvements matter across the system, and rural schools have that really important community hub role in very isolated and remote areas. Village schools also have a broader economic and social value. They keep younger families in the area and contribute to a diverse age mix in villages so that villages thrive. Services in villages remain as well. They support local early years provision and help maintain a balanced community. When a school disappears, the village becomes a different place. Fewer families settle there. Services decline. Buses get reduced because they're not commercially viable anymore. Community resilience weakens. Long-term consequences follow from short-term decisions. As a member of the Education Select Committee, I see the national picture as well as the local one. It is clear that we need a more coherent approach to rural education, one that recognizes the pressure schools face and supports their long-term sustainability. Closure should never be the default option. It should come only after every possible alternative has been explored. Village schools support families, strengthen community. They deserve real support and not subject to a managed decline, as in many cases. And therefore, I look forward to hearing the Minister's response. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well said, Manuela.